Hi, everybody. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk you through the instructions for the comic and some of the examples that you're going to be looking at for today's class. So, even though the draft of your comic is not due until May 4th, so you still have some time, I wanted to make sure you kind of got out any questions that you had now and were beginning to sort of think about it. So, we've been working through the research project in steps, and step 7, one of the last steps, is your comic. For your comic, you are going to take all of the information that you've learned through this project, including, your own sort of thoughts and opinions about the topic now, and you're going to pull that all together into a single document, which is your comic. For each one of your sources, you'll probably have a character, an avatar, and you'll have one for yourself too. So there'll be at least 6 people in your comic. And I like to think about the comic as like a conversation between your sources, including yourself, about your topic. So thinking about how your sources would answer your research question, what some kind of common areas are that multiple sources tend to be discussing, places where they agree, places where they disagree and have conflicting information. That's all the sort of things that are going to be covered in your comic. So, your comic will have 25 panels. Panels are the small boxes in a comic. Um, I'm just taking a look here now at the guidelines, and these are all on Canvas. You're going to have all 5 sources represented, and it should be a thorough conversation. So, like you don't want to put one source in just for one panel and have like one sentence from them. You want to make sure you're equally kind of representing all of your sources and really giving us plenty of information with in mind that this replaces a researched argument that would be at least many pages long. So that's the first requirement. The second is that you would be in the comic talking back to your sources, talking about how your opinions are changing based on what they're saying, disagreeing with them, agreeing with them. If you find problems with their research, issues, you could point those out as well. So your perspective is the second requirement and is very important. The last couple of requirements are more technical things. So, like here, you need to make sure that you're clear who is talking. So, you're going to have characters for each one of your sources, and we need to know like who is who and help us keep that straight. You need to make sure you practice academic responsibility. So, just like writing a research paper, you're going to have citations in your comic. I will, at a later point, be putting up on Canvas for you a kind of cheat sheet about what that will look like. But as you look at the examples, you'll also see that as well. It's just the same thing as you would do in a paper, your in-text citations, where you'll have the author's last name, page number, and date if you're using APA. You also need to make sure that you distinguish between the kinds of ways you're using a source. So if you are using a direct quote, you need to find a way to differentiate that between something you're putting into your own words, just like you would in a research paper. The last requirement is that your thesis statement be somewhere in the comic, and today's lesson is all about thinking about thesis statements and beginning to think about your own, which will come in very soon for some feedback. So those are sort of the overall general requirements. I want to take a quick peek with you at the samples. So you're going to look at these in more detail, but I put 4 up for you to choose from to look at. Here's an example of one. This is a good example on the second page of a way in which somebody's introduced their sources. So, they have at the very first page given us their full name and which source they are, and this is APA, so they've given the dates. So that as we move through the comic, we know who is who and we can refer back to that page. Another thing to notice in this comic and in all of the ones that you're going to look at is how citations are integrated. So you can see here, because this is APA format, after these people are talking, we've been given their last name, the date, and the page number. And you'll see that throughout, right? Anytime a source is either directly quoted from or a paraphrase is included, they have given us citation information. There are a variety of ways folks have approached this assignment, so you're going to see comics that look slightly different, and there's nothing wrong with that. However you like to approach this is fine, as long as you're meeting those requirements that I just went over. Just to give you like a sense, like this comic's a good example of some of the back and forth between the sources that I'd like to see in your comics, because the whole reason we're doing the comics is because in writing sometimes it can be really difficult to integrate multiple sources and have them talk to each other. You know, when you're writing a paragraph or a research essay, it's a little bit simpler to do in a comic, but this is really important work that makes up the bulk of an academic research paper. So you can see here, like, this person is talking about one topic, and then a different source jumps in and says, yes, I agree with that. I found the same thing in my research. And then she also added something that's a little bit different. So, like, they're agreeing, they're connected in that way, but she's contributing even more information. And then um, with the thesis statement, you'll see that occur in all these examples as well. In this example, the thesis comes at the very end, and that's pretty common. So a lot of people set up their comic as if it was like the journey of them learning more information about the topic and then coming to a decision at the very end. So here's the student's thesis statement, and you'll find that, like I said, a lot of times they appear near the end, but they certainly do not have to. And you'll also find, like in this comic, the student really comes out and introduces herself and why she's interested in the topic, so we know who she is and, you know, where she's sort of starting out. And so that's one way to approach including yourself, but you'll see students including themselves in different ways. So pay attention to that while you're looking at the samples. As you're looking at these and listening to the instructions, I'd like for you to think about any questions that you have at this point. And in the activity that's due for today, there's a space for you to leave questions for me. And what I'm going to do is make like a Q&A video with my responses to those really soon, so that I can clear up any confusion that you might have at this point. One final note, and I promise I'll stop talking, is that I would highly recommend using the Comic Life app that you already have on your iPad that we used for Project 1 to complete this assignment, just because you already have it and it works pretty well. And you can just find some pictures on the internet to use and put them into your comic. There's lots of free avatar generators out there. Alternatively, you're welcome to use like Bitstrips or anything else that you find out there as a tool, as long as you turn it in a format where I can see it, like as a picture or a PDF. I don't care how you make it. And if you're somebody who would even like to hand draw their comic, you're welcome to do that as well. Okay, so be thinking of any questions you have. Make sure you get those into that thesis statement worksheet as you work through it for today's class.